Test. 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 Test.
1 2 1 2 check 1 2 1 2 1 2 check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 check 1 2 1 2 1 2 check 1 2 1 2 1 2 check 1 2
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I can ask members of council to take their seat, on va commencer la réunion dans une minute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ottawa City Council meeting of 29th of April, 2015. For those who are able to, could you please rise for a moment of reflection and stay standing for the national anthem. And at this time, I'd also ask you to reflect on the tragedy that has taken place in Nepal, as well as a moment to reflect on those workers who have been injured or killed on the job as we marked that National Day of Mourning yesterday throughout the country. Merci. It's now my pleasure to ask Councillor Shad Qadri to introduce our special guests who will sing our national anthem, and I thank many members of council for wearing red, myself included. Councillor Qadri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and just to comment on your jersey, it's the wrong red for this hall. So. It is with great honor and privilege that I introduce to you this morning the Canadian Military Wives Choir under the direction of Alison Houston. The choir was established in September 2013 as a way of bringing these women in a military community together. These ladies have lifestyles that are characterized by frequent moves, long separations from their spouses, and a whole host of challenges to normal family life. The choir provides a place where the ladies feel they belong and where they can connect with other women who understand the unique lifestyle they lead. They meet once a week in Stittsville to support one another, have fun, and build friendship. Oh, and they do sing a little bit too. In 18 short months, the choir has grown to over 50 members and has built up an impressive list of performances. They have sung for such dignitaries as the Prime Minister, the Governor-General, and the British High Commissioner. This month, the ladies are excited and honored to be traveling to Hamilton to perform at the International Military Tattoo in front of an audience of many thousands. It is the long-term vision of these ladies that military wife choirs be set up across the country until a choir exists in every military base. In this way, as ladies are posted to new locations with their spouses, there will be a choir family waiting to welcome them. Currently, there's a second choir up and running in Comox, British Columbia, and a third one is taking shape in Edmonton. Now it is my pleasure to welcome them to City Council on behalf of Stittsville Ward 6. Thank you.
Katambrose porte le
Thank you very, very much for that wonderful rendition of our national anthem. And there are members of the armed forces who are members of the choir in addition to being spouses, so it's an honor to have you with us today. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Safa Fouda to the podium for this meeting's City Builder Award, and I'd also invite Dr. Fouda's counselor, Tim Tierney, to join us. J'invite aussi son conseiller, Tim Tierney.
As well as the counselor, Tim Tierney, to join us.
And you wore red as well today. You didn't even get the memo, so congratulations. Come on over here, Doctor. As Canada's capital, Ottawa acts as a hub for diplomatic missions from around the world, coupled with the fact that Ottawa repeatedly is cited as one of the best places to live, start a business, or get an education in North America. We're home to many different people, cultures, and ethnicities from around the world. I'm proud that new Canadians, immigrant families, and those of all ethnicities are able to share and see their cultures flourish in our city, adding to our cultural diversity.
I'm proud that new Canadians, immigrant families, and those of all ethnicities are able to share and see their culture flourish here in our city, adding to our cultural diversity.
That's why I'm excited to recognize the impressive contributions of Dr. Fouda throughout Ottawa. Dr. Fouda is a pioneering female engineer who moved to Canada from Egypt in 1969 and holds a PhD in chemical engineering. While her efforts have spanned a broad spectrum of volunteer services almost too long to list, Dr. Fouda has one clear objective: getting Canadians of all backgrounds to understand one another and work together on common goals. From some of the highest levels of government to the community level, Dr. Fouda has done just that. Elle a réussi à le faire à la fois.
For some of the highest levels of government to the community level, Safa Fouda has done just that.
In a broad range of advisory committees, roles in the private and public sectors. Dr. Fouda co-developed and is a long-term instructor of the cultural awareness training to RCMP officers and is a current member of the Ottawa Police Service chaplaincy. Dr. Fouda is also a frequent speaker, panelist, and expert contributor to federal government departments, universities, school boards, and interfaith communities on the tenets of Islam and integration. After her retirement, Dr. Fouda became more involved with several NGOs focusing on helping vulnerable communities and in cross-cultural bridge building, Muslim, non-Muslim relations, supporting human relief, education, and advocacy for justice and human rights. Your message of acceptance truly enriches your community and your city, and Ottawa is very lucky to have a champion like Dr. Fouda as one of our residents. For these reasons and many more, I'm very pleased today to present to Dr. Fouda the Mayor's City Builder Award for all you have done, both in your professional capacity, and I think you're even busier now as a retiree in a volunteer capacity. Thank you for making Ottawa the special place it is, Doctor. Come on over here, we'll just get a picture.
Mayor Watson, Councillor Tierney, and respected councillors, may peace be upon each and every one of you. I am humbled and very grateful to be with you today. Many years ago, that's 46 years ago, when I first came to Canada, it was not easy actually to come to terms with my identity. Being a first-generation immigrant, being a woman with a non-traditional career, and of the Muslim faith, it was hard. But it didn't take long to come to the realization that Canadian values are congruent with my own values as an individual, and there is no contradiction. So it became simple. I decided that my identity is to be Canadian, who happens to be a woman, who happens to be an engineer, and the whole other attributes. With that, the natural and only option was to decide to give back to the city where I loved what I found in it, and I was also given the opportunity to do what I love. I will add that any project or any activity never happens because of a single individual. I worked with teams of people, of beautiful, dedicated people who come from diverse ethnic and religious backgrounds. And working together only makes us know each other better. It generates friends. It builds bridges of peace. And this is precisely what we want for our city. Finally, I have a dream. And since I was given the podium, I will speak about my dream. And the dream is to actually see Ottawa as a compassionate city as per Karen Armstrong's Charter for Compassion. And this is something I dream of. I think it will happen because Ottawa has all the ingredients to become a compassionate city. I'm just saying this now as food for thought, and then we can follow it at a different place and different forum. Thank you so much, and I'm grateful to all of you. Sure, thank you.
Well, as members of council and the public see, I'm wearing a different shirt today. I lost a bet, notwithstanding the heroic efforts of our Ottawa Senators in an amazing second half of the season and never giving up with the Canadians. I'm wearing this jersey, and outside the Heritage Building, the Canadians flag flies for the next week. And thanks to our friends at Beaver Tails, they'll be delivered to the mayor and members of the public 1 hour of free beaver tails outside Montreal City Hall tomorrow. So we thank Grant Hooker and the Beaver Tails organization, and we look forward to tasting some of that Montreal smoked meat next year. So, Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call, please.
Conseiller Manette.
Present.
Councillor Middick.
Present.
Councillor Harder.
Here.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor El-Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Caudry.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Ici.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseiller Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor Nussbaum.
Present.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Present.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Chernyshenko.
Present.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Present.
Conseiller Blais.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Ici.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Kakish.
Present.
Councillor Hughley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
Here.
Le quorum est 10, Monsieur le Maire.
You have quorum.
Declaration of interest, including those originally from prior meetings. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. Yeah. Confirmation of minutes from the 15th of April, 2015. Carried. Communications as presented. Regrets. Councillor Diane Deans advised she will be absent from the council meeting of April 29th, 2015 due to city business. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation des rapports. Councillors Tierney and Chernyshenko, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That the Ottawa Public Health Board Report 3, Community and Protective Services Report 3, Environment Committee Report 2, Planning Committee Report 5A, Transportation Committee Report 3, and Transit Commission Report 2 be received and considered.
Carried. Adopté. Reports, Ottawa Board of Health, report number 3, rapport numéro 3 du Conseil de santé d'Ottawa. We'll have a presentation by the Chair and the Chief Medical Officer of Health, so we'll come back to that. Committee reports, Community and Protective Services Committee report number 3, du Comité des services communautaires et de protection. Item number 2, 2015 Child Care Service Plan, a funding framework for families and their children accessing not-for-profit licensed child care. Plan de service de garde d'enfants 2015. Carried. Thank you to the committee for a lot of work, and Dr. Burry. Is Dr. Burry here? I know you've been doing extensive consultations, so we appreciate all of the work on this project. Harmonization of recreation fees, harmonisation des tarifs des activités récréatives. Carried. Staff comments on the environmental assessment of the proposed Capital Region Resource Recovery Center. Commentaire de personnel sur l'évaluation environnementale du projet de centre de récupération des ressources de la région de la capitale. Carried. And thank you. I know Councillor Derues had a number of motions brought forward, as well as Councillor Blais, so we appreciate all of your input. Investment in affordable housing for Ontario 2014 Extension Program, Programme d'investissement dans le logement abordable de l'Ontario pour 2014. Adopté. Carried. And again, we thank Janice Burrell and her team for the good work on that project. Zoning bylaw, 68 Cooper Street, modification au règlement de zonage 68 rue Cooper. Carried. Zoning bylaw amendment 250, 266, 268, 272, and 274 Parkdale Avenue, 1518 Scott Street, 9, 11, and 13 Bowman Street. Modification au règlement du zonage dans le quartier de Kitchissippi. Carried. Carried. Councillor Leeper, thank you. Front-ending agreement and funding for Monaghan Landing, Crown Ridge Park. Entente de financement initial Parc Crown Ridge Sector Monaghan Landing. Carried. Thank you, Councillor Hubley. I know that's a big project in your community. Transportation Committee report number 3, rapport numéro 3 du Comité des Transports. Elgin Street Outdoor Patio Pilot Project, projet pilote d'aménagement de terrasse extérieure rue Elgin. Carried. Outdoor Patio Fee Review, examen des droits pour permis de terrasse extérieure. Carried. I want to thank Councillor El Shantiri. I know you worked as the chair of the representative of the Council of BIAs, and I appreciate your extra efforts on that. Bulk consent agenda, ordre de jour pour l'approbation en bloc. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda as presented. Carried. Okay. We'll go back now to the Health Board, and we'd ask Councillor Caudry to join us. Is Dr. Levy with us? If you'd like to come to the table, Doctor, and we thank you for the work. This is the first report coming to this new council. It's the 2014 report, and most of that year was covered by our former colleague, Councillor Holmes, so we thank her and appreciate Councillor Caudry taking over as chair. So the floor is yours, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and indeed it is my pleasure to present this annual report from the Ottawa Public Board of Health. As chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, I am pleased to present Ottawa Public Health's 2014 annual report. Here beside me is Dr. Levy, our Medical Officer of Health. We welcome 4 new public members and 3 new councillors to the board in this term. Over the past 4 months, the board has already made big strides by developing a strategic plan for the next 4 years, which we will see soon sharing with you. One of the strategic directions is to develop an adaptive workforce for the future. This speaks directly to OPH staff. That said, it is fitting that the 2014 annual report profiles our staff. OPH staff work hard every day to improve the health of Ottawa residents. Today, I will introduce you to 8 staff who work behind the scenes to help Ottawa residents stay healthy. On this slide, there are 4 public health staff who work behind the scenes. Maria takes calls from our Ottawa Public Health Information Line, top left. Lydia is a public health nurse with our older adult plan. Sean is one of our public health inspector who specializes in health hazard investigations. And Liz is our vaccine room coordinator. Every publicly funded vaccine that is given to Ottawa residents comes from the OPH Immunization Center. Liz makes sure that the vaccines are kept safely before they are sent to hospitals, doctors' offices, pharmacies, workplaces, and long-term care homes. Next, we have one of our epidemiologists, Lindsay, who works track health events and diseases in our city. We also have one of our case management nurses, Dominique, who works at our Clarence Street Sexual Health Clinic. And we have Kate, a project officer, and Erin, a public health nurse. Last year, they worked together to respond to parents' questions on Facebook about measles. The people profiled in this year's annual report represent only a fraction of the staff and services offered by the Ottawa Public Health. This slide highlights many of OPH's other services. For instance, 300 OPH volunteers contribute 7,000 hours to help deliver services. 20,824 residents visited OPH dental clinics, and 156 institutional outbreaks were investigated in 2014. I'm very proud of what OPH accomplished on budget in 2014 and look forward to moving ahead with the board's new strategic plan in years to come. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor, and I would be happy, along with Dr. Levy, to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Does anyone have any questions to the Chair of the Board of Health or the Chief Medical Officer of Health? Well, thank you, Councillor, for taking on that leadership role. And Dr. Levy, thank you and your staff. And I think it was a nice touch to focus on some of the people behind the scenes that do such good work in public health. So I appreciate that. Merci pour tous vos efforts.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Receiving of the report. Received. Merci. Adopté. Councillor Tierney, please. Motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption de rapport.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Ottawa Public Health Board Report 3, Community and Protective Services Committee Report 3, Environment Committee Report 2, Planning Committee Report 5A, Transportation Committee Report 3, and Transit Commission Report 2 be received and adopted as amended.
Carried. Merci. Motions of which notice have been given or have been previously given. Motion dont avis a été donné entièrement. We have a motion from Councillor Blais, seconded by Councillor Monette, with respect to hydro. Councillor Blais, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As many of my colleagues know, there is inherent hydro unfairness in the City of Ottawa. 45,000 residential customers have been forced to have Hydro One as their utility for the last 13 or 14 years of amalgamation. And for the majority of that time, the City of Ottawa has tried to acquire these customers from Hydro One to include them in the Hydro Ottawa family. And for many of those years, there hasn't been a willing seller. Now, as we all know, the Government of Ontario is quite interested in selling off parts of Hydro One. Interestingly enough, to reinvest in transit, and we have a nice transit asset to the province as well. So it seems to me that the time is right for Hydro One to sell these, or for Hydro Ottawa, to offer once again to buy these customers for Hydro One and for those discussions to take place. I don't think we're asking for special treatment. We're asking for the opportunity to offer fair market value to purchase these customers. For those who have not been following this issue closely, Hydro One similarly sold off interests in Brampton to a series of hydro utilities in the Brampton-Mississauga area to create a mega utility there. And so if it's good enough for Toronto and the GTA, I think it's very fair for the residents of Ottawa to ask why it's not good enough for the 45,000 residential customers here in Ottawa who are paying 10 to 30% more for their hydro every month. So I'd ask for my colleagues' support. The motion asks that the Mayor write to the Minister of Energy and to the Premier herself, and to include area MPPs and government caucus members to ensure that this discussion can take place. There is some urgency to it. As we know, the government has an idea to sell parts of hydro on the open market, but also in a very layman's reading of the Budget Implementation Act, I'm pretty sure that there's a section within the Implementation Act that would bar Hydro One from making any transactions of this nature until the first IPO. If parts of Hydro One are sold in the market, if a Bay Street bank or a Wall Street equity firm buys up pieces of Hydro One, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to get those customers out and bring fairness to these residents here in the City of Ottawa. So I'd ask for your support, and I hope that the province will engage in these discussions with Hydro Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blais. Councillor Tierney, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to, this is just a question around the actual motion. Is this giving delegated authority? I'm curious what's going to happen as a result of this, because obviously there is a value. I'm assuming that there will, I don't even know what the process is at this point, and will this ever come back to council for us to actually vote on? And I'm not sure who's going to answer that. Feel free, anyone.
Mayor, my understanding of the motion is that it directs you on behalf of City Council to ensure that the Premier of Ontario...
Sorry, I can't hear that. Can you speak up?
Yeah, sorry. My understanding of the motion, Mayor, is that Council is directing you to ensure that the Premier of the province is aware that the City wants to be involved in a transparent procurement practice or process, and it would be my understanding that if the province makes that available to the City, that any results from that would, first of all, be reported back to Council, and any decisions that might come out of that process would be decisions that Council would make in the future.
Okay, that's great. So we'll come back to Council at some point then. Thank you.
Others on the motion? Councillor DeRose, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo what Stephen's been working on, and this has been an issue since amalgamation. So I really encourage our colleague to give Stephen support on this. Thank you.
I'll just offer a couple of comments on this. I think, as Councillor DeRose just rightfully pointed out, this was an issue that should have been dealt with at amalgamation. We amalgamated police departments, fire departments, planning departments, yet for some reason hydro was left off the table. And it was the wrong decision back then, because we have situations where many of our residents, I think Councillor Blais has indicated 45,000, are paying a higher hydro rate than people in many instances that live right across the street. And we have a situation in Place d'Orleans that Councillor Monette knows all about, where half the mall is on Hydro One and the other half is on Ottawa Hydro. It just does not make any sense whatsoever. This council and previous councils and previous mayors have all consistently supported the notion that if we have one city, we should have one hydro provider. So my hope is that by writing and putting pressure on the provincial government prior to any final decision with respect to the sale of a portion of hydro, that this matter is resolved. And we're not unique, because Sudbury has a similar situation. I understand Hamilton has a similar situation. So I certainly will work with those mayors as well if this resolution passes. The other suggestion that's come up from time to time is, well, let's have binding arbitration. We'll settle it like that. Well, that's almost like a game of Russian roulette, and I'm not willing to put the taxpayers of the City of Ottawa and the Hydro Ottawa ratepayers at risk by leaving it to an arbitration settlement. Look what's happened when we've gone down the arbitration route Road, and Councillor El Shantiri knows all about this with respect to police and fire services. It's a complete unknown. You don't know what the end result is going to be, and it could be an expensive decision that would adversely affect our existing Hydro Ottawa ratepayers. We have a very well-run hydro system, and Councillors Harder and I believe Wilkinson are both representatives of Council on Hydro Ottawa. They do an excellent job under the leadership of Bryce Conrad, but we do not want to put at risk the ratepayers of the existing Hydro Ottawa at risk by signing up for a binding arbitration decision that could go very badly against us. So I commend Councillor Blais and Manette, and previously I know Councillor El Shantiri and other members of Rural Caucus have all supported these motions in the past. I think there is a tipping point in the sense that there is going to be movement on the 40% sale of hydro at some point, and now is the time to act, and I look forward to writing the Premier and writing the Minister, who is in the past, as we all know, supported this kind of a motion. So I'm hoping that he will again support us as a local MPP to ensure that we bring equity and fairness to all the hydro ratepayers, whether you live in rural Ottawa, suburban or urban Ottawa. So on the motion, carried, adopté, merci. Motions requiring suspension of the rules, we have a number of them. Councillor Taylor has a motion seconded by Councillor El Shantiri with respect to the prayer and a moment of reflection. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I apologize. On suspension, carried. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We are bringing forward that the rules of procedure be waived to consider the following motion, as there is an urgent requirement to align council practice with the recent Supreme Court of Canada ruling with respect to the matter of prayer at municipal meetings. There are a number of whereas clauses on your screen, but essentially this would move us into a space where we are aligned with the Supreme Court ruling, but still provide council with the opportunity to have a formalized moment of reflection as a practice to permit members of council who wish to do so to have some formal time to think about whatever they wish or the work of the day on behalf of all of the people that we serve. So the be it resolved clause is that council immediately adopt the practice of observing a silent moment of reflection at the start of council meetings to replace the prayer, and that staff be directed to bring forward the necessary amendments to the procedure bylaw for this interim practice to be formalized at the time of the 2014 to 18 midterm governance review.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't like this way of dealing with it because moments of reflection, moments of silence are usually for remembrance. And I don't think at a council meeting we are remembering. I think we are acting to support the work of the city and the community. And I think it would be far better to have a statement, not a prayer, a statement that doesn't say anything about God or any religion or anything else. For example, we say, Almighty God, like to work together to serve all our people. You drop the first two words, it's not a prayer. It's a statement. And I don't mind doing this as an interim basis, but I would like to have this looked at even, and not just formalize the time. I would like to have council members, actually some discussion with council members. We haven't had no discussion on this, before it comes back for the mid-governance review, so that there may be alternatives that we could look at that time. So there'll be a friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor, just to say that be discussed with council and then brought back is all I'm asking for, so that we can see if there are other people that would like to look at this in a different format. I really, for my moment of silence that we do on Remembrance Day in places like that, and I think it's not necessarily the best way to do it at council. I don't know if the mover wants that. I'm glad to move that amendment, but if they take it as a friendly amendment, I'd prefer it that way.
I think what we can do is because the clerk and deputy clerk will be responsible for bringing it forward, we could have it as a direction to staff that the council be consulted prior to changes. So direction to staff, Mr. O'Connor. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres commentaires sur la motion? Carried. Adopté. Merci. The next notice of motion requiring suspension is from Councillor El Shantiri and seconded by myself. This is on the wine by the glass license issue that we've talked about before. On suspension of the rules, carried. Councillor El-Shantir, if you'd like to introduce your motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And I believe my colleague on the previous council would remember we had a anomaly motion similar to this one, where it would allow, I think some of the councillors who had the rural visit last week, they saw what the practice is when you visit a winery and you get to support the local businesses, and they are allowed to offer by the glass. And this motion, Mr. Mayor, would allow for this term of council, so not every time we see a business in our community we have to come back here and start all over. So I think that will take us to the end of our term, and therefore be it resolved that until December 31st, 2018, City Council hereby supports the application of any manufacturer already duly licensed by the AGCO in the City of Ottawa seeking manufacturers limit liquor sales license by the license from the AGCO. So basically, Mr. Mayor, we've done it in the last term, and we're hoping my colleague will do it again, so in the benefit to support the business community, so we don't have to come back with a motion every time a business come up.
Great. I think as the councillor indicated, this is a umbrella motion that deals with all of the applications until the end of our term of council. These are the craft breweries and the local wineries, and it's something that we did at the last council, and it worked well. So any other questions on the motion by Councillor El-Shantir? Carried. Adopté. Merci. Thank you for that. We have another motion that requires suspension of the rules as a result of a federal application deadline of May 1st with respect to a West Carleton War Memorial. I'd ask for suspension of the rules. Carried. Councillor El-Shantir, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. If you could introduce the motion, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this project, we've been working on it for quite some time, and because of the funding, and most of the funding was from the community, it took us a little bit of time, but nevertheless we reached the goal where we can feel comfortable to go to the federal government now and receive the portion they have committed to this West Carleton War Memorial. So basically the goal was to raise $200,000 for the site, and we did. And this motion would ask for your support, my colleague, just to allow it to therefore be resolved the City Council consent to the use of the city-owned property in junction of Donald B. Monroe Drive and Fall Down Lane as a site for the West Carleton War Memorial, subject to approval of the road closure application and park dedication. So we are working with staff on both levels, from Park and Recreation and from the road. But this is a small piece of property in the corner, and the city have no issue from our staff to settle agreement with the War Memorial. So I'm looking for your support. And the timing, I know we've been working on for quite some time, but we didn't reach our goal until actually last week with a small private donation to give us to our number. But this is a good news story for all of us. First, to remember the people who serve abroad in a war, and also it's good to clean up that corner because it's been used like a garbage dump. Every time somebody doesn't want a tire, dump them in that corner of the road. So it is win-win for all of us, and I'm seeking your support.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Leeper, please.
Given the success of the fundraising efforts to date, I'll assume that there has been significant public support for this property. There's been consultation and discussion with the affected residents.
There we go.
Absolutely, Councillor. For a small community of 2,500 people living there, to be able to raise that money within a couple of years was a strong community support behind us all the way. Thank you.
So on the motion by Councillor El-Shantir, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, carried. Adopté. Merci. Are there any other motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure? No. Notice is a motion for consideration at subsequent meeting. Avis de motion pour examen à réunion subséquente. Councillor Eglai has a motion, seconded by Councillor Blais. That is a notice of motion. Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of whereases, but essentially what Councillor Blair and I are trying to do is create a situation whereby each council member will be allowed to use up to $10,000 from his or her office budget in advance of the separate ward traffic funding going through the SI process. And the rationale for this is that if we wait until the SI process, which will be approved late June, early July, we'll be falling behind in getting work done in our respective wards related to very real traffic concerns. It's been a long-standing practice at Council that we've been allowed to use our office budgets for this. So in effect, we'll be advancing, and then if and when the SI budget is approved, you'll be refunded out of that up to a cap of $10,000 per ward. And so this is just notice of it, and we'll be dealing with the next Council meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Fleury, seconded by Councillor Minnick, has a notice of motion with respect to National Health and Fitness Day. Councillor Fleury, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you around the table from the last term, we did this yearly. What it is on June 6th, there's special rates for our triad programs at the city to support national objectives of accessing our sporting facilities or recreation facilities and discovering our programs.
Thank you. Other notices of motion for consideration at subsequent meetings? Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Tierney, seconded by Councillor Chernyshenko, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the bylaws listed on the agenda under the motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, and are read and passed.
Carried. Confirmation bylaw. Councillor Tierney.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of the 29th of April, 2015.
Carried. Mr. Clerk, I understand that we have an update from the courts with respect to Plasco and the decommissioning. Could you give Council an update on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Earlier this morning, I can confirm, Mr. Mayor, to members of Council that the memorandum and the agreement that we were working on with Plasco and with the Bank of Nova Scotia over the weekend has been signed off by the court this morning. So, in effect, the settlement essentially between the city, Plasco, and the Bank of Nova Scotia takes the $300,000 decommissioning security funds, which were being held as a letter of credit via GIC with the Bank of Nova Scotia, are now going to be monetized and forward to the city's external legal counsel, Borden Ladner Gervais, for the purposes of the decommissioning exercise, which will take place afterwards. So, Mr. Mayor, I know this was a concern both of Council and very clearly the Environment Committee in February, and we were able to secure those funds, so they are now out of the stream with regards to the CCAA hearings.
Right, well, that's good news. Thank you. Deputy Clerk, are there any written inquiries? Adjournment. Councillor Tierney, please.
Great, thank you. That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of the 29th of April, 2015 be adjourned.
Carried. Adopté. Just to remind members of Council that we do have the emergency evacuation process that we're going to now take part in, led by the Clerk and the Deputy Clerk. So I'd ask that members of Council remain here. My understanding, Deputy, is that it's about a half hour. It won't take more than a half hour. So thank you for your cooperation. Meeting adjourned.